Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Today I'm going to be working on my Ficus microcarpa, the one I call fancy because it has all these multiple trunks and a fancy root base. I haven't pruned this tree since May of this year, where I defoliated the tree and pruned it, and I've just been letting it grow for the summer. This summer we had quite cool weather, so the ficus didn't grow really rapidly, but it's put on some good growth, and it's time to prune it once again. Here is a look at the tree. So it's kind of lost its rounded canopy. There's a lot of extensions that have grown up. So I'm not going to defoliate it. I'm just going to prune it with the leaves on, getting it ready to go inside for the winter, which will be probably in a week. We've got one more week of warm weather, and then it turns cold and there may be a chance of frost. I usually do a profile prune to my ficus first, and then I go in and selectively prune the branches. I think that's a good strategy for today. All right, I've got the blue scissors out. I'm going to begin the pruning. I haven't gotten a lot of strong growth on the top of the tree, so the height of the tree is still quite good. I'm going to just start from the apex here, or the peak of the tree, and round down. So here I go. I'll do a little bit of pruning here. And I just cut through leaves and everything, rounding the profile to create an umbrella style canopy. Now I need to step back and have a look at it. It's still quite flat on the top, so I need to reduce the sides more. I think I could go even more rounded. It's still a little flat looking on the top. That's getting closer. I still think I need to round a little more. I'll show you a view from the front. Here's a look at the tree. I'm just trying to see if I should round it more. I think it's looking pretty good. There's a lot of branches down lower that I need to clean up here, so I'll do that next. I'm having a look at the branches. I removed a vertical piece of growth there. I'm redirecting this one more towards the front. It's kind of growing towards the branch behind it. There's a few leaves I can clip off here. There's some new growth on the inside I can remove here, keeping the structure fairly clean, like that. There's a new little shoot here. I don't want that growing there. There's one here that could eventually fan out, so I'll leave that on. Kind of keeping potential new branches. There's one in here growing across right towards another branch. I'll take that out. And there's another one back here growing on the inside of a curve. A new shoot that also needs to be cleaned out. If I can get to it. There it is. There it goes. I'm just having a look at the structure. Here's one growing towards the inside that can be cleaned out. There's one growing straight up here. I can remove that. I'll redirect this one so it grows towards the outside of the canopy more. There's a new little shoot in here I can remove. And there's one here growing towards the inside I can remove. One here. And one here. Just cleaning out any new growth on the inside of the trunks here. Unless it's a good direction, then I keep it. The rest are looking quite nice, I think. Okay, let's start the pruning in the upper canopy now. Taking a look at it and just removing any branches that aren't going in a good direction and cleaning up the cuts from the blue scissors. For this operation, I'll be following each trunk line up to the branches and just looking at the structure of each branch and sorting it out. I'll start out front here, just following this branch up. I've got a branch growing upwards and I have a better branch growing downwards, so I'll take off the upper growth here, like that. I can tip prune this branch back to here, and this one I'll just take the tip off here, and then I've got two upward growing branches here, and none of them are really good looking branches. I could remove them, or I could just remove one. I'll tip prune this side of it, and then I think this one's got to go. It's too vertical. So there. Kind of creates a small branch there, but it'll eventually fill in that side. Always pruning for the future. Okay. So off of that, this is a double branch. So I've got a more horizontal branch forming here, so I can take the tip off this branch like that. And I could even prune it back to this horizontal branch, and I think I will. I think that'll be better. Again, always pruning for the future. Take some vertical growth off there, and some vertical growth off there. Now at the base of this branch, it divides from 1 to 2, and then I've got 2 new shoots, which makes it divide from 1 to 4. So I'll definitely take out this one. It's growing across the tree. And the other one I think is okay because it subdivides here and then here again. So I think that's fine. Just clean up my stubs. I think these 2 new branches down here are fine too. So that's got this branch cleaned up. I could take the tip off this one, and I will, just to redirect it more horizontally. Now I'm going to look at this branch here, and again I have some vertical growth here, and I have a more horizontal branch below, so I'm going to take that right off. Like that, keeping my branches going a little more horizontal. I'll tip prune this one. There's a branch here that grows back across the tree. I'll take that out. Like that. Keeping everything fanning out nicely and gracefully. So that's got this part of the branch pruned up. And then the other half over here, I've got a vertical piece of growth. I can take that off. And then I have a branch that's more horizontal down here, so I can prune the tip off here quite a bit. Taken off. There's some vertical growth here I can clean out. And then I've got to prune the tips off here and the tip off here. That kind of flattens that branch out. Now I'm going to do the one that's coming out the front here. So here's some vertical growth I can take out. There's two branches going from one spot. I'll take out the more vertical one here. Clean up a pruning stub there. On this branch, you can see I have a horizontal one, and then it continues to go vertical here. I could keep both if I prune this back to here, and this one back to a leaf that's facing downwards, back to here. I'll take this vertical leaf off just to clean it up a bit, and this one in here. Okay. So this branch, I could prune it back, keeping this as my branch leader. I think I'll just take this part of it off, keeping the one branch coming out to the side. And then I think I have a branch forming here, and this one crosses across the canopy, so I'm going to take this one out. If I get the scissors in there, there we go. Vertical leaf I can take off there. There's a branch coming off to the side here. It's going quite vertical, so I will prune it back to a horizontal leaf here, kind of flattening that branch out. So that's looking good. It's kind of opening this branch up to light. So I'm following the branch up. There's some vertical growth I can remove here. There's a more horizontal branch on the bottom down here that I could reduce that back to, and I think I will. So here I go, big cut, taking that whole tip off. Here's a look at the tree now. So you can see these side branches are looking more horizontal. They're more flowing. It flows from the roots up and outwards, which looks quite nice. So the work is continuing, getting these branches in good shape. Here's some vertical parts I can take off. I can take the vertical part off this branch, shorten the branch back. Here's a look at the tree, so you can really see the areas I've thinned here, over here, and I haven't touched the top yet, so quite a difference. But the tree's looking very nice and flowing, which is what I want. I want this tree to become a very graceful looking tree, and eventually, these branches will reach up and hopefully weep as the canopy grows wider and the tree matures. And this one's a little straight, and the radial direction of the leaf is out, of the branch is out here. And I've kind of got a lot of clutter here, so I'm going to remove this whole end to the branch there, kind of redirecting it in a more radial pattern coming off the trunk. That's another thing you have to look for, is your branch direction. You don't want them kind of going off on funny angles. You want them flowing out from the trunk radially. There's one on the inside here I can take out. I'm getting close to finishing the pruning, so now I'm going to step back, have a look at it, rotate it around, and just look for anything I've missed. Here's the front of the tree. So I'm just looking for things that kind of bother me. There's a shoot growing the inside here. I can take that out. Don't need that. I could shorten this branch back. I think I will. It kind of would look better, I think. Cut back like that. A little less straight looking. I think this one, I have a leaf out front. I'll prune it shorter, kind of grow it out this direction, more of the radial direction of the branch. It's possible as this shoot develops, I could prune this part off eventually, but that's for the future. I'm a little straight here. I could prune it to this horizontal branch. I think that would be a good idea. Another big cut, like that. I think this one could be shortened to here. There's one branch here that's kind of growing, two branches growing together, but as this shoot down below develops, I can prune that off later. It's something I can't really do now. There's one growing, no, that one's okay. Just rotating around now. So you want to look for opportunities. You know, if you can shorten branches, sometimes it's a good idea. So this one here, it's okay. I could shorten it to this one eventually. It's kind of growing out the back. You don't really see the length of it. I think that one branch has to be removed. It's growing up beside another one. Just some fine tuning I'm doing. Continuous refinement, that's what bonsai is all about. Okay, I'm back to the front. I think that is it for the pruning. Here's a look at the tree from the front. So the shape is quite nice. It's got a nice umbrella canopy. You can see the structure is very, very flowing. It continues to improve as the branches and trunks thicken up. So I'm not done today yet. I need to have a look at the root base and the moss. Before we do that, I better show you a Blue Jay Bonsai carnage cam. So it is thick, the carnage today. And it doesn't stop there, it's on this side too. I've cleaned up all the leaves and debris, so now let's go in and have a look at the root base of this tree. Just like the branches above, I'm trying to create a nice flowing, graceful looking root base, and it's slowly getting there. It's taken a lot of work over many, many years. Out front on the root base, I have a couple of new roots. I think I pruned off a root here, and then some more roots grew in that root's place. I have to decide, do I want to keep those? There's two possibilities. I could rearrange them with the next repotting, trying to get them to flow nicely. It is nice to have, new detailed roots, so they're not all big, thick roots at the root base. But I think in this case, they don't really, flow at all with the tree. So I'm going to prune them off. I'll come in with my cutters and just remove them. Just roughly at first. And I'll remove them from the soil line also. And this one too. Like that. There's a weed in there I can get out. Okay, so now I need to clean that cut up, making it a little more flush. Like that. That'll do nicely. Roots like this, they kind of hug the trunk. Even though it's not a perfect radial direction, it kind of disappears between these roots, and that's okay. It'll fuse in eventually. These ones too around the back. There's a couple here hanging out in midair. I'll get rid of those. So this one here. And this one here. Like that. Some of these root hairs can be removed. They're a bit dried up. Some of these hanging ones I'll leave. Okay, there's one sticking up here. I think it's alive, and what happens with these roots is they generally, as they get older, they will tension themselves and it'll suck it down and become part of the root base. So I think that one's fine. There's a dried up one here. I'll take it off. It's not really contributing anything to the root base. Generally on a ficus, because they're, big giant shade trees, that you don't get anything growing underneath them. It's usually just soil surface. So what I'm going to do is pick away all the moss around the root base, kind of a ring around the tree, and then replace that with sand. And that'll kind of create a more realistic look to the ficus root base. It'll also allow me to expose some of the roots. So some of them, where they're reaching out in the soil here, are covered up with moss. The moss has kind of been encroaching on the root base and growing over some of the roots. So it'll make the root base look a little more detailed and a little wider in the pot. I've got my tweezers and I'll just start cleaning up the root base. This tree was last repotted in June of 2021. So it's been just over 2 years now. So it will need repotting again early next summer, just to sort the roots out once again, improve the root base, maybe start subdividing some of these roots, these thicker ones. So removing this moss will expose some of these roots that are hidden underneath the deep moss, which is growing quite thick. So I will be giving the moss an overall prune also. So ficus require a lot of root work, and you can't just ignore them or they quickly grow out of shape. They're an easy tree to grow, ficus, but they require a lot of maintenance, especially if you want a nice looking root base. It takes a lot of work to kind of detail prune them, keep them looking in scale with the tree, so you don't get great big fat bulbous roots on the tree. And usually the focal point on a ficus is the root base. That's what all the tourists take pictures of, is the root spread. They don't necessarily take pictures of the top of the tree. So it's important to get your ficus root base sorted and looking miniature. Otherwise it doesn't look like a miniaturized tree, it just looks like a regular ficus house plant.
And I have lots and lots of videos on this tree showing repotting, root pruning. And you'll see at times I've taken some quite drastic measures with it. But it's necessary to get a good looking root base on the tree. And ficus, you know, they're pretty tough trees. They can take some good solid root pruning as long as the tree's healthy. You do it when the weather is warm and humid, sunny. The tree will recover very quickly from any work you do on it. You don't want to do severe root pruning in the dead of winter unless you have a nice grow light and a humid plant room to do it in. Generally, early summer is best when the weather warms up and you get good sunny days. And warm nights are important too. And your tree has to be healthy. Repotting a weak tree is never a good idea unless, you know, it's an emergency repot, you have a problem with the root system, insects, or, you know, really poor soil. There's a grub in the soil there. See that? Those are those crane fly larvae. I get a lot of those. But they generally just hang around and eat the moss, I think. I've never seen them deep down in the soil eating the roots of the tree. And when you do repot a ficus, try and make every repotting count. Try and do the root work. Don't just slip pot them or trim the bottom roots off. Try and sort the upper roots out, because that's what you see in the pot, and that's what's important on a ficus, is these surface roots, not what's below the soil line so much, at least visually. So this is really fun work, kind of exposing the root base, cleaning up the base of the tree. So this tree doesn't have any aerial roots on it hanging down from the branches, but it's something I may do someday. I'll put it in the greenhouse here for the summer and turn the watering system on to keep it moist and humid in the greenhouse, and it'll probably grow aerial roots from the branches. But I'm in no hurry to do that because aerial roots tend to thicken up very, very quickly. So you can always leave it for the later parts of the development of your tree, so they're nice and thin. And then, you know, you can replace them. If they grow too thick, you can cut them off and start a new one. There's another root that was hidden under the moss here. Oh, and another grub, see that? There it is. A grubby. Well, we'll put that in the compost pile. So you can see the extra roots now that I'm exposing. They were covered with that layer of moss. So it's nice to see the roots spreading out across the surface of the soil. It really adds a mature look to your tree. If the roots are good looking, you don't want ugly roots exposed.
I'll work away exposing the roots around the base of the tree, and then we'll come back and have a look at it.
I've got the moss trimmed away from the roots now. So next I'm going to trim away the moss from the lip of the pot.
I'll come in with the scissors and just trim it back so it's not overhanging the lip.
So next I want to shorten this moss. It's growing a little long, so I'll just come in here and just lightly prune the top, taking it back, trying to keep it, you know, fairly green. It will green up again. And if you keep up on your moss trimming, you can make your moss last for years and years, and it won't get too thick. You can keep it pruned back, so it keeps a thin layer on your planting. If you neglect it, well, then you've got to either strip it off or hard prune it back and wait for it to grow in again. I'll just prune some of these roots at the edge here too. They're kind of sticking up a bit. Okay, that's looking quite trim now. So next I'm going to add my layer of sand around the base of the tree. Before I do that, I'll just brush off the moss with a brush here. All the stuff I've trimmed away. All right, here I go with the sand, and this is just playground sand. I'm not using the light colored sand because it would be too much contrast. And this just gives a realistic kind of ground texture. And I'll wash it in so it's kind of a little more flowing and integrates with the moss a bit more. I think that'll do it. Okay, I'll get out the watering can and water that sand in. All right, here I go with the water. You can see the sand flowing out and filling all the nooks and crannies and sort of flowing into the moss part way. So it provides a nice transition so it's not just a line between the moss and the sand. Here's a look at the sand and the moss. Now there's a few places out front here that there's a little too much sand and not enough moss. So I'll just get my sidewalk moss here and kind of add some clumps of moss in here just to help with that transition from the moss to the sand. Okay, I think that'll do it. It looks a little patchy right now, but I think, as I said, once it kind of spreads a little bit and has a little bit of time, it'll look quite natural. I'm going to look for a stand for the tree. The Toronto show is in 2 weeks, so maybe this tree will be looking good by then. I don't know. If it does look good, I'll put it in the show. So I need to pick out a stand for the tree to go on. I've tried the tree out on the $7 table, but the $7 table looks too big and heavy and it takes away from the tree. It's just too much stand under the tree, so I need something smaller and maybe a little less massive. Here is the tree on the red stand that Matt made. I think that's better. It's acceptable, this one, that's for sure. Yeah, I think it's still, both the pot and the stand look a little massive compared to the tree. And that'll change as the tree grows. As this canopy gets larger and wider, it'll definitely eventually really suit this pot. And this pot is quite new. It's shiny, it looks like a new pot. So as that pot gets older and the tree gets older, I think it'll all kind of start making artistic sense, I hope. My Ficus microcarpa, the one I call Fancy, took some more steps ahead to becoming a beautiful mature tree in the far future. And that is all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.